And I'll add, the people who see speaking and emphasize the business part of speaking instead of just the
Heart,
performance, because
the
that
heart,
gets.
the soul, the reason to be. Absolutely. Well. Good evening. Good evening. Good evening. I'm Valda Ford. I'm the head of the education committee for Black National Speakers Association. It's just a joy to be here, and especially to have our guest tonight. Before I get there, let me say that this will be the kind of format that I always love, the one where we get to ask questions and have the answers, that it's not just a presentation to us, but the opportunity to learn from, gain from, participate in, and just rock this whole speaking business in a way that we do use our words to lift the world. Our guest tonight probably needs no introduction, and therefore I will not give one, is SimonTBailey. I remember seeing him the first time on the National Speakers Association stage, and I thought, wow. And you know, we bring it. We really bring it with NSA. And so to have someone who was soaring above the rest, I was just so excited, and I have loved watching his star continue to rise and shine with brilliance. So let me have you, Simon, come on up here and let's have some conversation.
Well, hello. It is so good to be with you. Thank you for squeezing me into this opportunity to share. Just happy to be with you. And hello to everyone that is joining us virtually. Black NSA, I so appreciate all that you are doing as you stand on the shoulders of Thelma Wells, and it's good to be with you.
Yes. I mean, there are so many people who have gone before us who have had to really endure some things. And that's what Black NSA is all about. It is about having the message for the people who may have a couple other obstacles to go through, over, and across, and our allies who support us and love being with us. So, Simon, let me just jump right in it. I've had the opportunity to do a lot of looking around on the web, looking at your YouTube videos, reading a lot about you and your story, how you decided to go from somebody doing up Disney the right way to someone who said, okay, Disney, bye-bye, or Disney said bye-bye. Tell us a little bit about how you got started and why you ended up thinking that speaking from your heart, from your soul, from the stage is what you do and do so well.
So in 1999, Disney sent me to Paris to design a leadership program for 1,000 leaders out of Barclays Bank out of London. And at that particular time, Lion King had just come out. And so they wanted to learn leadership principles from Lion King. And I was on stage and I said, remember who you are. You're more than what you have become, which is one of the famous lines from the movie. And people came up to me afterward and they said, we had goosebumps the entire time you were talking. And I went back to my hotel room that night in Paris and I asked myself 3 questions. Number 1, what would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? Number 2, what would I do if no one paid me to do it? And that third question from the great philosopher Howard Thurman, what makes you come alive? And I said, I want to speak, write, train, consult, and coach. That's what I wanted to do. So I came back from Paris to Orlando, couldn't leave Disney right away, but I realized that I wasn't going to be there for the gold watch. And fast forwarding December 10th, 2001, I'm sitting at my desk, and whenever you work at Disney, you never talk to the media unless authorized. And a journalist calls me and says, where do you see yourself 10 to 15 years from now? And I said, I see myself as the president and CEO of the Walt Disney World Resort, and eventually the chairman and CEO of the Walt Disney Company, insert bless his heart. So HR showed up and they asked me to sign a piece of paper that went into my personal file. My boss called me in the office And it was not a very pixie dusted conversation. He said, "What were you thinking when you did this interview?" And I said, "Larry, I work at this company whose motto is, if your heart is in your dreams, no request is too extreme. For when you wish upon a star, makes no difference who you are. Funny today, not funny then." And I get a call from Jim Lewis, who at the time was the highest ranking African-American executive at Disney. He reported directly to the president, Al Weiss, and he says, "Do you need me to go to the president on your behalf? Because this is really bad." And I said, "No." So net, I realized that I had committed career suicide at the time. I was sales director and new business development director for the Disney Institute. And I went back to that moment when I was in Paris, when I answered the 3 questions. And here's what came out of it. It's so ironic we're having this conversation. So this article appears in Florida Business Trend magazine, and I get a call from Florida A&M University looking for a commencement speaker. And I said, "Well, who have your speakers been in the past?" They're like, "Oh, we've had Secretary Madeleine Albright, we've had Bill Cosby, we've had this person, and we want you to come." And so I said, "Okay." And so they tell me the honorarium. Now, mind you, I still have a 9 to 5 job. And I had the audacity to tell them, "Well, that honorarium you quoted, I get double." I didn't have a speaking date. I had a job. I had a paycheck. They said, "Oh, Mr. Bailey, we'll have to call you back." Sure enough, they called me back a few days later. They said, "We can meet your honorarium." And sure enough, so I called Jim and I said, "Jim, I'm going to Florida A&M December 2002 to be the commencement speaker. I need you to cover me, because if my name shows up in the press again, this is not going to be good." So I took a vacation day, went and did that commencement address, 10,000 people. And that's what I realized in January 2003. I said, it is probably in my best interest if I find my happiness elsewhere. So that's how I left Disney.
Wow. Wow. They say when the teacher is needed, the student appears, or vice versa. So for you, you're thinking, well, I know that the nail is already in the crucifix. Now, when do they drag me down and put the crown of thorns on? And then you had this opportunity. That's beautiful. And you were bold enough to say, "I'm not taking that."
When I left Disney, I did something unthinkable. And I must say thank you to my then wife, who said to me, "Whatever you decide to do, I'm with you." Our children were young. Daniel was 4, Madison was 18 months old. Daniel's now 24, Madison's 21. And their mother didn't work outside the home. I cashed in my entire 401k with significant Disney stock. I took out a line of credit on the house. I turned down 4 jobs because I sensed this was the beginning of the end. And I turned down all 4 jobs. Our country's going to war with Iraq for the 2nd time, and corporations were laid off by the hundreds of thousands back in 2003. So with this line of credit on the house, 3 years of savings, 3 years of a runway, and no plan B, this like kind of had to work.
Mhm.
And here we are 20 years later, still standing. God has been good.
Yeah. So we have a variety of people who are here. We have some people here who are on the stage all the time, on a plane, going somewhere to get to the next somewhere to speak the next time. And we have people here who are considering, can I make this my career? So since you had a cushion and you decided there was no plan B, what do you say to people who always are kind of having that plan B, figuring out, do a little bit here, a little bit there? I know that it can work either way. Do you have any words of advice for those who are ready to stick their toe on into the pool and maybe jump in the deep end?
So I can only speak from my experience. Burn the boats, go for it. Until you decide to go for it, there will always be hesitation because you are wondering if this is going to work. And what I discovered, until you're fully committed, fully in, the universe will not bend in your direction. But once you make that decision, the universe begins to realign itself around your decision to lift others up and help the planet heal, and help.
Wow. Wow. That's awesome. So for all of us, and especially those who may be newer in the game, how did you go about finding your speaking opportunities? How did you leverage that commencement speech, or did you just say, okay, I'm starting from scratch. I'm making 20 phone calls a day. I'm sending out ads and knocking on doors. How did you do it?
Okay, so let me take you back a year before I left Disney, before they were about to invite me to find my happiness elsewhere. I started to create a list of people that I had met over a 15-year period professionally. That's number one. Number two, I started getting up 30 to 45 minutes early every day before the time I needed to go to Disney. And I would just work on the business, the speech. What is this? What am I going to do? So I created an exit strategy for myself. So yeah, I say burn the ships, and that's tongue in cheek, but I think it's important for me to step back and give you a little of the backstory. So what I realized is Disney Institute was getting a lot of requests from corporations who wanted to learn the Disney way. But Disney turned down business for whatever reason, or companies were unable to come. So what I recognized, oh my goodness, there's an opportunity. So when I left Disney, I couldn't use any of Disney's proprietary information. But what I quickly realized that the money was in content. So for those of you who are thinking about going for it, whatever your background is, what is the backstory? What have you learned where you are? Because people will pay you for your experience, right? And it's the story of what you learned in operations and supply chain, and what you learned in management. What were your successes? What were your failures? So capturing that. Then once I left Disney, I went over that list of individuals that I had met over 15 years. It was about 75 people. And I start calling them. Hey, I've put my shingle out. I'm a speaker, hadn't written a book yet. I can come in and share what I've learned because I've grown up in the hospitality industry. Here's what the value that I can add to your company. I didn't make it past the 25th name before all of a sudden the phone started calling. So yes, pick up the phone, call people. I'm available. Simultaneously, I got a call from a friend of mine who worked with me in the industry, and she had just started an online newsletter. She says, hey, will you write an article monthly for my newsletter? I said, yes. So I started writing that article, and those articles became 12 months, 12 articles. They became chapters in my book. I didn't know it back then, but I said, oh my goodness, I'm going to write, because you speak to write, you write to speak. I started going to the Chamber of Commerce, the Kiwanis, Rotary, because what I realized, sometimes you have to speak free before you get to the fee. And this is way before the internet privacy laws and different things, but I would put a bowl in the back of the room saying, hey, I want to put you on my newsletter list, collect business cards. And I would literally get all those business cards and call those business cards and start sending them my newsletter. And it's a grind, and it's tough. And I got rejection. And yep, I had a mortgage. I had Pampers and diapers and milk that I had to buy. But I recognized that there was nobody coming to help me, right? Like, it had to work. So it was just pure hustle.
Okay. So considering that you did all those things, and when you got to number 25, there was okay, we're going to start calling you now instead of you just calling us. Do you think that there was something that was tipping that other than just the grind? Did you hit the right people? Was the combination of your calling plus what you were writing plus you're showing up, was it a triple play that really worked?
Yes to all of the above. But I also operate from the ethos of how can I serve you? So it is about not just showing up with hat in hand, but it's showing up to add value. Uh, Number two was also understanding that people didn't really care about a speech. And I mean that with all due respect to everyone that is listening to us right now. Clients don't give a rip about you have a speech because motivational speakers are a dime a dozen. Do you have the ability to listen to their problem? So what I quickly discovered after hitting my head up against a few walls and experiencing rejection is that customers and clients wanted to know, can you shift from being paid to speak to being paid to think? And when I made that shift in my mindset, I recognized I needed to ask more questions. I needed to listen more deeply, and I needed to speak to them in the terms that they were speaking to me and wrapping my content around it. And that in and of itself became one of the ways we were able to get the next engagement and the next engagement, because it wasn't about the speech, it was about the solution and how we were able to customize on the fly to their specific problem for 30 minutes, hour, half day, multi-days.
So for those of us who have been taught, get that signature speech, make sure it's just perfect, you have the right movements, hand gestures, the pauses, that may be the stylistic thing, but the undercurrent is I'm paying attention to you, not just making sure you're hearing this that's spilling out of my mouth.
Everything you said, Velda, is valid. And that's the art. The science is the quality of your questions determine the quality of your thinking. The science is, do I understand the research in your industry? Point in case. So I'm out here speaking. I'm like, okay, I'm the man. I get a call from State Farm. And State Farm says, Simon, we looked at you and we looked at Marcus Buckingham. Marcus Buckingham, who worked for Gallup, statistician, brilliant guy. He and I start the speaking industry the same year. And his fee was 5 times what my fee was. The client says, Simon, you're in our budget. We're going to go with you because Marcus is 5 times more, requires a private plane and a private car. So they call back a few days later and say, guess what? We are going to go with Marcus instead of you. And I'm like, hold on, you guys said you didn't have it in the budget. I said, what happened? They said one of the executives, because I was going to talk to the top 400 executives of State Farm. They said one of our executives saw Marcus speak and took the money out of his budget to afford for him to come. So I said, well, can I come and hear what 5 times my fee looks like, sounds like? I show up on that day. I'm listening to Marcus Buckingham. And the point of differentiation was he had research and he had data and he had examples as to how his work went deep. And I was like, what? I was like a deer staring at the headlights. So I went up to him afterward, right when he was getting in his private car to go to the airport to get on his private jet to fly back to California. I said, Marcus, we started at the same time. I'm a speaker just like you. Da, 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 da. I was like, what's up, right? And he said, Simon, I'm not in the speaking business. He said, I turned down 200 speaking engagements a year. He said, I'm in the business of transforming a company. And when he said it, I had to whack upside the head. I say, thank you very much. And just a few years ago, the Marcus Buckingham company was sold to ADP. So what I recognized even back during that time, this is over 10 years ago, that I needed to think from a business angle, not just a speech. And I love speaking. I love being on the stage like everyone else. But I had to shift in my thinking to say, okay, where am I going with this long term? Am I building a business or am I comfortable with a practice? And there's nothing wrong with it. It just depends on what you want.
Wow. Now, there are some questions from folks who sent things in ahead of time and some that are sending them now. But one theme that keeps showing up is, what were some pitfalls that you didn't see ahead of time but now you recognize that you could give some information or advice to people who are listening now, especially new folks. What pitfalls are there and what can you do to avoid them? I guess number one, being of service and not just being about yourself, but other than that.
Be yourself. Have your own voice. I start out, everybody thought I was the next Les Brown because I had watched less, studied less. So I had and I love Les. We stand on the shoulders of Les Brown and George Frazier and Dennis Kimbrough and Keith Harrell. We stand on their shoulders. People were getting a microcosm of them. They were not getting me. So be yourself. That was the pitfalls that I didn't learn, because I would show up at NSA and I was like, oh my goodness, I got to take a little Zig, a little Jim, and a little Nito, and all of a sudden, and I didn't have my own recipe. And here's the thing, when you don't have your voice, you don't find freedom. But when you find your voice, you find your freedom. I was, pitfall, an annoying echo instead of an original voice. And when I was able to make that leap, I said, I got to be me. Next pitfall, take care of your money. Taxes are real. I'm going to double click on that. Taxes are real because we get paid a lot of money for an hour time, and all of a sudden the IRS shows up. Are you working for the IRS? So what are the strategies that you can put in place now, if you don't already have this, to ensure that you're not working for the IRS and they are not your cousin or your relative, right? I think that the next pitfall is not all business is good business. Saying yes to everything because you have a bill to pay. I know Ritz-Carlton teaches the answer is yes. Now, what's the question? But sometimes you have to say no to protect your yes. So one of the pitfalls of saying yes to everything. So what I quickly realized is when I said no to things and referred them onto other people, what goes around comes around. Give it away. If that's not your lane, be okay and moving on and giving that to someone else, because it opens up for you to be available what's coming your way. I think the last pitfall is I tend to be a loner. So I know this is going to come as a shock to everyone. I am a socialized introvert. So I just like my me time, and yeah, I can be out. Hey, how you doing? Great. Nice to meet you. But I just like being by myself. Like, that's just my jam. What I recognize, you can't know yourself by yourself. So I was fortunate enough to be invited into a mastermind group with Waldo Waldman, Laura Stack, Tim Gard, Ruby, Stephen Shapiro, about a decade ago. And we would get together twice a year. I hosted them in Orlando. They came to my house and we'd fly to different places. I cannot tell you how much I enjoyed being around people who really get our industry, and we challenged each other to really step up. Colette was in our group as well. Colette Carlson, who's now in the Speaker Hall of Fame, as well as Tim and Laura. It just so blessed me. And here's the thing. I was the only one in the group that looked like me, but they didn't make me feel as if I was an outsider. I felt like I was truly a part of the family, right? Because I grew up in Buffalo, New York, third poorest city in America, lived in Atlanta, went to Morehouse. So I am all about our people. But what I recognized for me, if I was going to grow, I needed to surround myself with people who didn't look like me, so that what I would learn and who I would become in the process. So I had to get out of just staying to myself and I'm gonna be okay. I don't need nobody, nobody knows the trouble I see. I had to let that go.
Yep. I understand. You get beat up either side. So just pick the one that works for you and keep it rolling. That's what I say. Okay, so there are people who want to know How do you keep yourself relevant? How do you do that? And I would imagine it has a lot to do with listening.
So the same letters that spell the word listen spell the word silent. Shift from selective hearing to authentic listening. This quote that I'm about to give you, I heard it from Tony Robbins. I don't know if it originated with him, but it bears true. Leaders are readers and readers are leaders. If you're not reading, you cannot feed. I have 3 books going on right now that I listen to at least 10 to 20 minutes a day when I am walking. And I'm picking up on what is the latest thinking, what's happening. I subscribe to the McKinsey Consulting report. You can subscribe, it's free. Because companies pay McKinsey millions of dollars to look into the future. I need to know what that latest thinking is. What is Gallup saying? So number 1, you got to read. Number 2, put yourself in a room where you're not the smartest person in the room. Create a surround sound of people who intellectually challenge you. And I am around some folks that, I mean, I wonder, how did I get in the room? Because they make me think, right? The well that you drink from is the well that you think from, and eventually it's the well that you draw from. So sometimes you can have a 50 by 60 dream, but you have 8 by 10 thinkers. So you got to be around different thinking. I think the last thing that I will say is I learned this from Brian Tracy and listening to a presentation he gave. So I have this journal, and this journal is something I learned from Brian Tracy after every engagement: what worked well, what needs to improve, what's the next step. In every speaking engagement, virtually or in person, what went well, write it down. What needs to improve, write it down. And what's the next step, which is, how am I going to take action? That's how you stay relevant. Never drink your own Kool-Aid. What? That's right. I said it. I heard this story the other day, and then we'll go to the next question. It was so good. So I want y'all to subscribe to the Monday Morning Memo. It's by Roy Williams. He tells this story of this guy who was a speaker. He went into town, and he's a mini celebrity, and he gave a great speech. He got a standing ovation. And then all of a sudden he gets back to his hotel room, and he's in a little small town, and he's hungry. So he goes to the McDonald's. The doors were locked, but drive-through was open. He goes through drive-through, standing in drive-through, no car, ordering, and a guy is behind him in a Buick saying, "Hey, Greg, that was a great speech tonight." And his whole point was, stay humble. Because you might not be the bow of the ball tomorrow. Just stay humble.
Yes, I have seen a lot of that big old head thinking that goes on. You had the opportunity, you got that first fat paycheck, and no one can tell you anything. So when you're looking at those 3 things that you do you start with the people who brought you in? Do you have those insiders that you do a debrief with? Is this you deciding what went well, or how are you collecting that information?
Valda, you just articulated it perfectly. What was the feedback from the client? Did they give you survey data that you can look at? What there were some verbatim things that you did, a story, you engaged the audience, what went well? Then what did people actually come up and say? A lot of people come and say, "Hey, when you said this, okay, that went well." Make a mental note or write it down. If you think it, ink it. And then the other thing in what went well is, when I was on stage, how did it feel? What did I sense? What was a natural flow for me? So looking at it through those 3 different lenses understands what went well. And then what needs to improve is what didn't land. That story didn't land. The client may have given you feedback. That is so important in improving and getting better. And then when you get to the next step, it's not trying to create a laundry list of, here's all the things that I need to do, and you beat yourself up. No. One thing, just one micro step to get better inch by inch. What's the old saying from nursery? Inch by inch, it becomes a cinch. So what's that one little thing that I can improve upon so I get better the next time around?
Mhm. Let me ask you this. When you are preparing to speak somewhere, I know everyone that I speak to, I have really pretty much as many talks as they want before we actually get to the event. I might say we'll have one 30-minute session, but if they ask for 3, I'm going to give them 3. How much time do you spend in your prep getting information from the person who's bringing you in or the people who are bringing you in?
I'll use T-Mobile as an example. And let me just say this, sometimes when people throw names out, they're trying the virtual signal. And I'm not trying to do, I'm just trying to use an example just so we have context. So T-Mobile brought me in to do an engagement. The prior year, they had Walter Bond. So Walter's a dear friend. We both went into the Speaker Hall of Fame in 2015. So I called Walter, said, Walter, what was it like when you spoke at T-Mobile? Give me the whole day. And he walked me through. He said, okay, Simon, you need to know they are sticklers for this. You need to be on point. The dot, you're going to have a ton of calls. They're going to make you work, but it's going to be worth it. So I went in, okay, thank you, Walter. Then this was about a 36-day project where I was interviewing different people within T-Mobile. So all in all, that was probably on the higher end, probably about 36 to 40 hours for a 1 to 2 day delivery specific. But when I got done with them, they thought I worked for T-Mobile. So what I believe we have to do, wink, wink, we have to do is we give a little something extra for nothing. And they don't even see it coming, but they're like, dang, he showed up or she showed up and gave all of this extra. And that becomes the point of differentiation that they can't get anywhere else to say that's a bad mamma jamma, because you just show up and do what you do. And they don't see it coming, but it's all the work behind the scenes. So on average with most clients, probably 10 to 15 hours. And then a lot of that, if I'm not interviewing their individuals, I'm also just trying to understand their company. So I'll have Google Alert that's set up. Oh, by the way, please, and I know all of you already know this, do not put any proprietary information you find out about them in AI. Do not put it in the chat GPT. Find another way to get information, but then say, okay, here's what I know. How do I now take my expertise, come alongside that, and give them something that meets their need?
Hmm.
You know what, y'all recording this? I'm gonna go back and listen to this myself. I'm learning some stuff on the fly. What?
Yeah, it's serious. Trust me. I am glad that it's recording because I cannot possibly be writing and thinking about the next question at the same time. But the next question is, the gold for speakers is the ability to take a one-off and turn it into a multi-date year eternity where they know you are the person you want to bring back in the house. How do people who are accustomed to getting, I want you to come and spend 20 minutes on a keynote, get that ability to move it to the next level? Is there some special sauce?
So I just did this with a client, and we've had about a 3-year run with them where they brought me back time and time again. Keynote, virtual, in person, whole 9 yards. I met with the CEO twice at her request. So here's the secret sauce. Get to know the company. If they're publicly traded, get into their annual report. Ask them, as you build a relationship, for their customer feedback, but also the employee survey. If they're willing to share the employee survey with you confidentially, you'll sign an NDA because they don't want any, obviously, any of their proprietary information. Sign the NDA, but get it and dig into that employee survey. Because that employee survey, that's where the gold is. That's where they go offsite, do a retreat, coming back saying, here's what we're going to move forward with. So that when you talk to them and you're working with learning and development, HR, operations, sales, you have a 360-degree view of how employees are thinking, what leadership needs, what customers want. And now you mix that into the bowl of opportunity in speaking and give them an original recipe that they're like, oh my goodness, can you come again? We need more of you. So build a rapport to get their inside intel. The other thing is talk to someone in finance, because finance knows where the money is. They know where the opportunity is. And if you build that relationship enough, some things, if they're a privately held company, they don't have an annual report. But if you build a rapport with them saying, you know, where are you guys trying to save money as it relates to people, operations, customers, da, 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 da. Have that working knowledge. Remember, you're paid to think, not paid to speak. So when you speak to them, if you're at the senior level, you're speaking to them in data, in numbers, how this impacts the bottom line. If you're speaking to director level, middle management, you're connecting with them as it relates to people management. If you're speaking the front line, you're telling those stories, the once upon a time, charging them, but you're as we've often been said, the thread that you're pulling all the way through is I know you. And when they know that you know them, you don't compete on price because you've showed value.
Yeah, that's awesome. And with that, I want to circle back around to something you said earlier, and that is about the free speech. So many times I see people saying, don't do a free speech. You shouldn't do it. You shouldn't lower your price. You shouldn't do whatever. And even though, as you said, you kind of hit them on the head in the beginning and say, I want more than that. And you got more than that. But somewhere along the line, you were giving those speeches that you weren't getting paid for. Or maybe you're getting a chicken lunch or something, chicken salad, hopefully not pimento salad. But anyway, for the people who are worried about that, tell them how that translates into real money, real business, real opportunity.
Oh my goodness. How much time do you have? Okay. I'm going to say something that's totally counter to what our dear brothers and sisters in NSA often talk about. 20 years later, I still, on an annual basis, will do free speeches. Strategically, it's got to be the right organization. Why? Because a speech, well, no, let me tell you how I came up with this concept. So I study comedians a lot because I'm just interested. How in the world does a comedian hold attention and night after night, gig after gig? And what I realized, I was listening to some of the great comedians, and they said they still go down to the hood and they work on their material. And they're working on material to see what works. I'm like, oh my goodness. So whether they get paid or not, they're working on something that may show up on the big stage. So I do free stuff strategically or discount it because it's a sales call. There's generally a buyer who can buy something from me. So point in case, we spoke at an event, it was a freebie, and our team said, okay, who's in the room? And they said, decision makers from this, and this. We're like, what? So they couldn't pay me a fee, but they could buy books. Well, guess what? We gave books. I did a book signing. And from that, we just got a call the other day from a client says, oh my goodness, we love your book, Be the Spark, 5 Platinum Service Principles for Creating Customers for Life. We want to order 1,100 copies to make it our book of the month that we are going to give to all these people. Can you ship it to 25 different locations? We said, absolutely. And we said, we will take care of the shipping, blah, 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 blah. But what I recognized, it would have never happened if I didn't go and speak free. So be open to that because it's a marketing opportunity, but be strategic about this is leading to what? Because there are some people who ask you to speak free and they don't respect what you're bringing to the table. So we've said no to those opportunities.
I always think of when I give a free speech to try to get something out of it, whether it is a video recording, some great on-site testimonials, but I always remember that anytime I'm on the stage, I am representing who I am and what I want you to know about me. But I've seen some people who really kind of slack at it's a free speech or I'm not making very much, and they totally miss the point that they can destroy those opportunities with that. Will you speak a little more to that? Have you seen that?
So the first thing to think about, why are you speaking? What's in you to speak? Is this a job or is this an opportunity? If speaking is a job stands for just overboard. So you'll work hard enough to speak and do just enough to get the next gig. But when you see it as an opportunity, you show up every single day realizing that you are holding in the palm of your hands people's lives. Point in case, a few months ago, I'm speaking in Nashville. Lady comes up to me afterward, and this was a discounted engagement. They didn't have my full fee, but we said yes to it because I just felt it was the right thing to do. And lady came up to me and she said, I was in my room and I wasn't going to come down for the keynote because I was going to commit suicide. And I decided that I would come down and hear your keynote, and you have given me hope to keep going. Now, we were on a step and repeat. We had to turn. She broke. I broke. I was like, oh, Lord, that was the moment. I thought it was just her. Guy comes up to me next, 50 years of age. I've just been diagnosed with a disease. I've not told my family. I haven't told anyone about it. You're the first person I'm telling. Thank you so much. He broke. I broke. We hugged. And what I realized, that's why I left Disney. It wasn't about that the client didn't have my fee, didn't buy books. I was there to hug people with my words. And when I put that perspective in my mind, I go up and share with every audience because somebody may not wake up tomorrow, but did they feel loved, cared for? Dr. Maria Music at University of Michigan, clinical psychiatrist, said people need to be seen, valued, and understood. So on that stage, did they feel seen? Did they feel valued? Did they feel understood?
Wow. I mean, that is so powerful. We never truly understand what our words mean to the person who's receiving them. And that's why it's so important that we bring our whole authentic selves. So going to a little business now, a few people have asked a question about bureaus. To work with a bureau is the goal of many people, and some people I know are represented by bureaus or have many coming to them. In the early days, how did you get started with bureaus, or are you?
So in the early days, I was chasing bureaus down. And this is back in the day when I was sending out a VHS tape, DVD. Hey, book me, book me, book me. My stuff was going in file 13 because they didn't care. So what I recognized, I had to vujade. I had to go in the opposite direction and really start killing it on stage. The bureau started calling me when I started taking money out of their pocket because their client would say, hey, we just saw him and we're going with him. And they're like, wait a minute, rut row. So it kind of happened, and serendipitously, it was kind of like opposite. So I didn't chase them. And when they saw that I wasn't chasing them and I was still booking, then they said, hey, we want to represent you, want to put you on our website. And I said, okay, that's the way it should be, because I wasn't chasing them down to beg for a date. Okay, so don't chase, be great at what you do. Now, once you do get on their website, so the question is, so Simon, they book me for one thing, how do I get more bookings? Okay, I'm gonna take you behind the velvet rope. I'm gonna give you my secret sauce because I love you, okay? Don't be a prima donna. Do not be difficult to work with. Don't just chill out, show up early. If they say, hey, your call time is 7:15, 6:30 a.m., you're there early. Be easy to deal with. Oh, you need anything? "Oh, just a bottle of water, I'm fine." Go above and beyond, because the word will get back to the bureau person. It was so wonderful working with Larry. It was so great working with Sylvia and Valda. Oh my goodness. And the client will just start talking, right? Just start chirping, right? And that's what you want, because now that they'll make a mental note of that, and they're like, oh my goodness, it was easy to work with them, which means it's easy to book you the next time. Here's the other thing. Any spinoff that I've gotten, this just happened a few months ago. Client called Stevie, who's my director of business development, said, hey, want to book Simon for this? They booked me. And when we found out where the booking had come from, it was a bureau booking that had happened a few years ago. So what did we do? We wrote a check, a commission check to the bureau, sent it to them, and they were like, what are you doing? I said, because I want to operate in integrity. This came from you, and we just wanted to say thank you. Now, why would I do that? Because I want to let them know I'm not trying to take food out of your mouth, and it's a small world. People talk, and I don't want you to think you booked me and I'm running off to try to steal business from you. No, here's a check. They may never book me again, but you know what? I sleep well at night because I did right by them. So if a bureau books you for something, just, hey, pay it forward. It's cost of doing business. It's a tax write-off. Don't sweat the small stuff, okay? I think the final thing with the bureau, and I did this early on, and it paid off this past year. So a bureau person, I had been after this agent to book me. I actually booked a round trip airline ticket, and I said, hey, would you come and see me in this city? Just see me do my thing. She flew in that day, flew back that afternoon, said, Simon, thank you. She did book me for 10 years, but this year she came through like a champ. That booked me for Pfizer, a significant opportunity, booked me for another engagement, and has already teed me up for 3 other opportunities. So what I recognized, she said, I'll never forget when you flew me to see you speak. I've never forgotten you. So there's an agent where you develop a rapport with, say, hey, now everybody's a little wonky and traveling these days. If you're going to be in the city where the agent is based, invite them to come and hear you, or go and have lunch with them, have coffee. Now make sure it's a direct booking. Do not invite them into a bureau engagement. You have been booked, okay? Because you will get on the list. You don't want to be on the list.
Mhm. And speaking about the list, I know that event planners, bureau folks, they're a little cliquish. They know, they talk, they recommend. What have been some of the things that either you did before you knew better, or you've seen people do, other than being a prima donna, that absolutely will get the death knell?
So, wow, how much time do you have? All right, so let me give you 3. Uh, your speech just falls flat. It just is bad, right? I've had that, and I said, you know what? You totally missed it, Joker. Like, you bombed. Okay. Number 1. So don't bomb on stage. This is like kind of what you do. The second thing, to don't go over time. Somehow planners remember those little things that I just went over 5 minutes. Don't go over time. Third, if they tell you don't sell from the stage and they've had that conversation, do not sell from the stage. Don't. I started out early, so I was like, I got to sell my books because you got to know, and I was like this salesman pushing a book. And what I recognize is when I stop pushing, I start pulling people to me, because instead of sharing information that was a mile wide and an inch deep, I went an inch wide and a mile deep. and connected with hearts and hands. So I didn't have to use the jaws of life to pry open their wallet to buy my book. They opted in to buy my book because I didn't sell from the stage. Now, I know there are different people that they have different approaches or anything, and there's obviously the invisible sale, and there's different things that people teach. I'm just saying what I have seen from the lane that I'm in.
Mm. Yes, I have seen that. I've seen all of those things. I have felt the fall flat when it worked somewhere else, and maybe I didn't do enough research that time about the group, about the conditions that were going on in the surrounding areas. And I did learn the hard way. Now, one person has asked, how is it that you can connect your message since you are a person of faith? How can you keep that going? I imagine some of the backdrop of that is there are so many people who are anti everything. They reject everything. How do you stay true to yourself with your message on the stage?
Number one, my life might be the only Bible people read.
Mm.
Number two, I recognize that in the marketplace, I have to represent the light, love, and life of Christ. Christ was in the marketplace. And this is not for me to get preachy or anything. I'm just sharing with you my story in 20 years. So what I do is every room I go in, my wife and I, we pray. I pray before I go in that room. And I ask God, how do I take what they've shared with me and what I need to say to connect to where they are? And I do it and have done it for the last 20 years. And I remove me out of the way, as Ken Blanchard calls ego, edging greatness out. And I move to eco, engaging, caring often. And how do I come from a place of caring and kindness and love and using universal accepted words where people are not triggered by, he must be faith-based. No. It's all in reading the room. And it's understanding what is the psychology, what is the emotion, what is the mentality of the people, even though my cognitive bent is spiritual. It's the foundation. It's who I am at the core, right? I'm a classic church boy. I'm third generation PK, right? I know church, but I'm not in the church. I'm in a business that has a bottom line. So I go in to understand that business and be light in the midst of darkness. And I look at, what would Jesus do? How would he show up and pull up a seat next to an individual and speak to their soul based on what you know?
Wow. Yeah. Also PK. 2 generations deep. So I get that. And I love the fact that it's all about what you said. You might be the only Bible people read. You might be the only grace that they see. You might be the only light in their lives. So I love that. I love what you do. I've always just been amazed by your brilliance. And so we're coming to the end. And the final question I'll ask is, are there some things you see on the horizon for us that will help us stay the path, maybe elevate our game a little bit? Are there things that we might not see that you see that might help us be better, be more caring, and be more apropos to what is needed from us?
So Valda, before I ask your question, I want to ask you, how are you for time? Can we go over a little bit if we go over a few minutes? Okay. And I think Teresa, Miss Robson, who's ever running this, is it okay if we go over on the platform? Okay. So because I want to honor you, I don't know when we're going to get together again, family, and I want to make sure that I serve you and that I answer as many questions as possible. So when I think about the future, and our team just concluded our 2024 strategy of where we're going and what we're doing as we think about the next 25 years. So I'm 20 years up the road now, just turned 55. I know I don't look it because black don't crack. I'm just saying, it's right there. You look good, my brother. So what I recall a conversation that Nito was sharing with Tom Wininger. Tom Wininger, who's former NSA president, one of my mentors, he's no longer with us, fabulous gentleman. He said back in their 50s, they were looking at what were the other individuals who were seasoned, what were they doing? And how did they start to think differently? So for me, where I sit, 20 years having fun, still feels like day one. I still love it. Madison is my baby girl, 21, Daniel, 24. I'm remarried. So Jody and I have two daughters, have two bonus daughters, Ashley and Chelsea, 28, 27. They may not go into the business. And I don't want to burden them with, you got to take over the business and keep on the legacy. This is what the Lord wants you to do. No. Okay. So as we have now moved into a world with algorithms, Alexa, artificial intelligence, autonomous cars, how do we, and I say this to everyone, we are no longer in the speaking business. We are in the content distribution business. We are media companies that happen to distribute content, keynotes, books, online courses, coaching, training sessions. We deliver digital snackables, bite-sized pieces, family. We are in the content distribution business. And in the content distribution business, how do we offer content 24/7, 365, every day, every way, everywhere? If research says people touch their devices 300 times a day, how do we look at our content, chunk it down, and make it available? I don't know what that looks like for you, but we have to be thinking about that as the world evolves and changes. I almost said the soap opera as the world turns. At a moment. So how do we look into the future? Content distribution, number one. Number two, the future is strategic alliances and strategic partnerships. How do we begin to find those organizations, those businesses, where we can hook our content onto where they are going? So, point in case, we have been talking with a company. They approached us. We were looking to work with them. And they said, hey, we have a platform. Would you be interested in putting your content on our platform? The moment they said it, it reminded me of a conversation I had years ago. I was sitting on a plane with a guy named Dr. Peter Evans. Dr. Peter Evans at that time was director of strategy for GE. And he has a PhD from MIT. This guy started talking on this 2-hour flight. I took out my notebook and I started writing. I said, Dr. Evans, what do you do at GE? He said, I look 15 years into the future. And I said, what does 15 years into the future look like? He said, Simon, you need to understand platform theory. I said, what's platform theory? After we landed, he emailed me a white paper that he and another PhD had written about platform. It just blew open my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to connect with platforms that can help us accelerate quicker and faster. And some of you, if not all of you, are already doing that. Amplify that, accelerate that even more, because that's how you get out quicker, faster. So for instance, what would it be like for you to be on a platform in an AI world and people can hear you in multiple languages? It's possible. Why not? Why not go there, right? Because from your home with a device, you can touch the world. What would it be like for you to create a mentoring program of people who aspire to be just like you, where now you're going to teach your expertise? I wish somebody would have told me this 20 years ago to start mentoring those coming up behind us, right? What would it be like for you? All right, now I'm going to go way back. How many of y'all remember Little Bill, right? Little Bill. How many of y'all remember Fat Albert? Hey, 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 is Fat Albert, right? What would it be like to start to reach the generations, the alpha generation coming up, taking content that normally we do in corporate America, but we take it down next gen, next gen, next gen. We are in the content distribution business. How do we think through that lens from the cradle to the grave? How do we help people?
Hmm. You know, I love that whole idea of taking those very principles that we're putting up there
Mhm.
and making sure these down here get it, because I know I wish people would have taught me a number of things early on that once I got into corporate America, I learned, but I was like, oh, I could have been like 10 steps farther ahead had I learned a little tiny bit of this when I was younger. So I
Yes,
love.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Who else?
So there are a couple questions here, like, how has your speaking platform evolved over the last 20 years?
I've reinvented 5 times. And so my first iteration as a speaker was really a consultant. So remember, take it back to the 5 questions or the 3 questions in pairs. What would I do if I knew it can fail? What would I do if no one pays me to do it? What makes it come alive? Speak, write, train, consult, and coach. So first, I was consulting with a hospital, and they wanted to improve their patient satisfaction scores. They used Press Ganey, which is kind of like a JD Power. And so what I recognize is I didn't have the bandwidth or the core expertise, but I was a sales guy. So I said, yes, and I'll figure it out. So say yes, and you can build the plane on the way down. Connected with a friend of mine who had a master's in instructional design. She had worked with me at Disney. And she said, Simon, I'm going to take your content and I'm going to build out a program for you that you sell to the hospital. Best decision ever. Can I get a what? Sold the hospital gave me the rights to retain the IP that I created for them. I was able to take that IP and resell it to another company and another company and another company, but I had the hospital pay for it. So that was my first kind of like 20 years ago, like, oh my goodness, it's about content. I think the second iteration and how in 20 years, why this is still fresh for me is I go and I just sit in the room. What do I mean? If a client books me for a keynote speech, y'all, when you go to a company or a conference, it is like a mini MBA on steroids. You get to learn what is happening in this industry from their experts. I just go and sit in the back of the room and I'm taking notes either on my phone or I'm old school. I've got a little notebook that I keep here, and I'm just writing like, oh my goodness, oh my goodness, and I'm just learning it. So by the time I hit the stage, I've probably been to 3 or 4 sessions if I have the time, if I'm not flying in from somewhere else. And they thought I'm in their industry. I'm not. I just listen deeply. That's something I would pass on to y'all. That's free. I'm not even going to charge y'all for that or bill y'all or tell you to sow a seed or send me a little something, something. Some of you that don't know what sow a seed, that's churchism, all right? So I think the third iteration is when I had that conversation with Dr. Peter Evans, I said, I got to find platforms. So I just started looking for platforms to put content on. A few of those we connected with but it was all smoke and mirror, and it was a failure. I spent money that I shouldn't have spent, and it didn't work out. However, I learned from that. That informed me in moving forward. So now we're on our sixth reinvention as we think about the next decade. And where we're going now, I've got a new book out coming out the beginning of the year, my 11th book, favorite book that I've written, and it's a business parable that is something I've never done before. But here's what the intention behind the book. We created our own publishing company, and we said we're going to go 4 to 5 colors in the book. We hired an artist we commissioned them to do an art piece and got the rights to own the art. It's beautiful. I mean, it is not a Pookie and them book. It is beautiful, right? So when people pick up the weight of the paper, what? Yes, this is the Ritz-Carlton of books. So when people get in, like, dang, and that's intentional because I'm trying to send a deeper message to pull them into the funnel of where we want to take people as it relates to our work around brilliance. So that's how in 20 years, for me, it still feels like day one. Now, let me just share a little offshoot from that. I was married for 25 years and I lost my marriage because of this business. Okay. So y'all that's booed up, stay married. Don't let this business end your relationship. Okay. Real talk. So yeah, there's a video that went viral, 90 million plus views, whatever. That video is because my daughter came into my home office one day and she said, "Hey, Dad." I said, "Hey, baby girl." And I said she wanted to talk, but I was emotionally unavailable because I was busy. I had another speaking engagement. And I said, "Madison, you want to talk to me?" And when I came back off the road, she said, "Daddy, it's okay." I said, "No, it's not okay, because if I don't change my behavior, you're going to marry a joker just like me." So I built a house, but lost a home. I was chasing money, but had no meaning. And I was pursuing power, had no purpose. And I was going after success, but had no significance. And after 25 years of being married, their mother said to me, "You give everybody the best of you, but you give us the rest of you. And I don't want leftovers anymore." You don't have to lose your family as you build your speaking business. One of the great examples of how to do this right is Willie and Dee Jolly. I just admire them as a couple. I was a little bit hard-headed and did not lean into Willie's wisdom to ask him, "How do you and Dee make this work?" I just my mom used to say, "A hard hit makes a soft bottom." Okay, so you don't have to go through divorce. You can keep it together. Okay.
Mm. Wow, Simon. Simon, wow. I will leave this to say, I can't imagine a time that I've had a more eye-opening, heartwarming, deep thinking conversation where there's just so much that you brought to us that I will be listening, re-listening, getting the transcript, trying to decipher it, calling you up to say, "Simon, wait a minute, what did you mean by that?" Because I was busy thinking about the next question, which sometimes is the hated part of interviewing. But do you have anything else you would like to leave us with before we go? Because I just love it. I would keep you here all day, but I know you have to go. And final words of wisdom to the folks who are trying to do their best to lift the world with their words.
Yeah. So I just wrote this the other day, and I may put it in a book, I may not, but uh, it's something that I give to you that just speaks to me at 4:30 in the morning. Uh, Let these words hug you tight. Let nothing dim your light. Your bright light demands and delights. Walk onto the stage. The curtains are opening. Step into the spotlight and be resurrected life.
Amen, amen, and amen. Thank you, Simon. Thank you so very much. And let's give Simon a big set of hands waving and just thank you. I appreciate you. I appreciate everything about you. The fact that you've shared your life, your story all over the place, and we've had the opportunity to learn today is just, it's ambrosia.
Well, we got to go out.
We got to go. Thank you, Simon. Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here. Oh my goodness, this has just been amazing. Thank you, Teresa, for hanging out and helping us out and keeping things going. And remember, one thing that Simon said was about surrounding yourself with people where you're not the smartest person in the room. Or even if you are the smartest person in the room, you can sit back and listen to the people you don't think are quite so smart and find that they have wisdom beyond all understanding. We are putting together a mastermind here at Black NSA, Think and Grow Rich, and that's coming up very soon. It starts on the 18th of September, and I hope that you will join us because, one, I'm one of the facilitators, so what could be better than that? And number two, there's so much goodness that will come from that, and so many more colleagues, friends, and people that we will value for the rest of our lives that we meet in this small space while we develop big things. I'm Valda Ford. It's been my joy and my pleasure to be with you, and I look forward to being with you soon. Check in with Black NSA so that you can join us for the mastermind and future events like this. Take care now.